Welcome back to At One Insight World, where we uncover the hidden forces shaping our world through a geopolitical lens. Today, we're diving into battlefield cyber, how China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are using cyber attacks to undermine democracy by Michael McLaughlin and William J. Holstein. Published in 2023, this book is a timely wake-up call as we navigate 2025, a year marked by escalating cyber threats, from the recent hack of Ukrainian infrastructure to ongoing tensions in the Middle East. Michael McLaughlin, a cybersecurity expert with decades of experience in the U.S. intelligence community, teams up with William J. Holstein, an award-winning journalist who's covered global tech and security for outlets like Businessweek, to expose how authoritarian regimes are weaponizing cyberspace to destabilize democracies. In this 40-minute audiobook summary, we'll explore the rise of cyber warfare, the specific threats posed by China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, and what this means for global stability, especially in regions like the Middle East, a focus of our channel. Let's step onto the cyber battlefield. First, let's set the stage. What makes cyber warfare so dangerous in today's world? McLaughlin and Holstein begin by explaining that cyberspace has become the fifth domain of warfare, alongside land, sea, air, and space. Unlike traditional battlefields, cyber warfare is invisible, borderless, and often unattributable, making it the perfect weapon for nations looking to wage war without firing a shot. The authors highlight how the internet, originally designed for openness and collaboration, has been exploited by authoritarian regimes to attack democracies. A single cyber attack can cripple critical infrastructure, like power grids, hospitals, or financial systems, without leaving a trace of the attacker. In 2025, we've seen this firsthand. A recent ex-post by Cyber SEC News reported a massive cyber attack on Ukraine's power grid, widely attributed to Russia, which left millions without electricity for days. McLaughlin and Holstein argue that these attacks aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a coordinated strategy by nations like China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea to undermine democratic systems, sow chaos, and weaken their adversaries, all while avoiding the consequences of traditional warfare. Why are these four nations, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, so focused on cyber warfare? The authors explain that each country has its own motives, but they share a common goal: to challenge the U.S.-led global order. For authoritarian regimes, cyberspace offers a way to level the playing field against militarily superior democracies like the U.S. and its allies. Cyber attacks are cheap, scalable, and deniable, perfect for nations that can't compete in conventional warfare. McLaughlin and Holstein dive into the history of this shift, noting that the first major wake-up call came in 2007 with Russia's cyber attack on Estonia, which shut down government websites, banks, and media after a dispute over a Soviet-era statue. This attack marked the beginning of a new era, where nations realized they could wage war through keyboards rather than tanks. Since then, the authors argue, cyber warfare has evolved into a sophisticated tool of statecraft, with China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea leading the charge. Each country has developed its own cyber arsenal, from hacking groups to AI-driven disinformation campaigns, all designed to exploit the vulnerabilities of open societies. Let's start with China, which the authors describe as the most strategic and long-term cyber threat. Building on themes we explored in the 100-year marathon on this channel, McLaughlin and Holstein argue that China's cyber strategy is part of its broader plan to become the world superpower. China's hackers, often linked to the People's Liberation Army, focus on stealing intellectual property to fuel their economic rise. The authors cite the 2015 hack of the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, where Chinese hackers stole sensitive data on 22 million Americans, including security clearance details, a treasure trove for espionage. In 2025, China's cyber activities continue unabated. A recent ex-post by a tech insider noted that Chinese hackers targeted U.S. electric vehicle companies, likely to steal battery technology. But China's ambitions go beyond theft. McLaughlin and Holstein highlight China's use of cyber tools to control information, both domestically and globally. Through the Great Firewall, China censors its own citizens, while its digital Silk Road, part of the Belt and Road Initiative, exports surveillance tech to countries across the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, helping authoritarian regimes monitor dissent. This not only strengthens China's allies, but also undermines democratic values worldwide. Next, let's turn to Russia, which the authors describe as the most aggressive cyber actor. Russia's strategy is less about long-term dominance and more about immediate disruption. McLaughlin and Holstein detail how the Kremlin uses cyberattacks to sow chaos in democracies, often as retaliation for Western policies. The 2016 hack of the U.S. Democratic National Committee, where Russian hackers leaked emails to influence the presidential election, is a prime example. In 2025, Russia's cyber operations remain a threat. The Ukrainian power grid attack I mentioned earlier, reported by its cyberattacks news, mirrors tactics used in 2015 and 2016 when Russia cut power to hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians during its annexation of Crimea. The authors explain that Russia relies on state-sponsored hacking groups like Fancy Bear and Cozy Bear, which operate with impunity under Kremlin protection. These groups don't just target infrastructure. They also spread disinformation to deepen societal divisions. McLaughlin and Holstein note that Russia's interference in the 2024 U.S. election, through fake social media accounts and AI-generated deepfakes, shows how cyber warfare has evolved into a psychological weapon, eroding trust in democratic institutions from within. Now, let's focus on Iran, a country we've covered extensively on at One Insight World due to its role in Middle East geopolitics. McLaughlin and Holstein describe Iran as a rising cyber power, one that uses cyberattacks to punch above its weight. Iran's cyber program took off after the 2010 Stuxnet attack, a U.S.-Israeli cyber weapon that sabotaged Iran's nuclear centrifuges at Natanz. The authors explain that Stuxnet was a wake-up call for Tehran, prompting the regime to invest heavily in its own cyber capabilities. By 2025, Iran's hackers, often linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, have become a major threat. The authors cite the 2012 Shamoon attack, where Iran-backed hackers wiped data from 30,000 computers at Saudi Aramco, Saudi Arabia's state oil company, as retaliation for U.S. sanctions. This attack cost Aramco millions and disrupted global oil markets, showing Iran's ability to hit economic targets. In the Middle East, Iran's cyberattacks often target U.S. allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia, as well as U.S. infrastructure directly. McLaughlin and Holstein highlight a 2024 incident, mentioned in a Reuters report, where Iranian hackers breached a U.S. water treatment facility, attempting to poison the water supply in a small American town. While the attack was thwarted, it underscored Iran's growing audacity. In 2025, Iran's cyber activities have escalated further, especially amid stalled nuclear talks with the U.S., which we've covered in our recent videos. An ex-post by @Iran Cyberwatch on May 22, 2025, reported that Iranian hackers targeted Israeli defense contractors, stealing sensitive data on missile defense systems, a move likely intended to undermine Israel's security as tensions over Iran's nuclear program out. The authors argue that Iran uses cyberattacks as an asymmetric weapon. Unable to match the U.S. or Israel militarily, Iran turns to cyberspace to inflict damage, sow fear, and project power, all while maintaining plausible deniability. Finally, let's look at North Korea, which the authors describe as the most opportunistic cyber actor. North Korea's cyber program is unique because it's primarily a money-making operation. Facing crippling sanctions, the Kim regime uses cyberattacks to fund its nuclear ambitions. McLaughlin and Holstein detail the 2014 Sony Pictures hack, where North Korean hackers leaked emails and destroyed data to punish the studio for a film mocking Kim Jong-un. More recently, North Korea has turned to cyber theft. The authors cite the 2016 Bangladesh bank heist, where North Korean hackers stole $81 million through a sophisticated cyber attack on the SWIFT banking system. In 2025, this trend continues, An ex-post by an Nkinuzor reported that North Korean hackers stole $300 million in cryptocurrency last year alone, using the funds to develop ballistic missiles. But North Korea's ambitions go beyond theft. The authors warn that Pyongyang is developing cyber weapons to target critical infrastructure, like power grids and nuclear plants, as a deterrent against the US and South Korea. While North Korea's cyber activities don't directly impact the Middle East as much as Iran's do, they contribute to global instability, creating a ripple effect that empowers other rogue states. What does all this mean for democracy and global stability? McLaughlin and Holstein argue that cyber warfare poses an existential threat to open societies. Unlike authoritarian regimes, where information is tightly controlled, democracies rely on transparency and trust, both of which are easily undermined by cyberattacks. A single hack, like the 2020 SolarWinds attack, which the authors detail as a Russian operation that infiltrated U.S. government agencies, can expose sensitive data, disrupt operations, and erode public confidence in institutions. In the Middle East, where cyber warfare intersects with geopolitical rivalries, the stakes are even higher. Iran's attacks on Israel and Saudi Arabia, for instance, could escalate into broader conflicts, drawing in global powers like the US and China. The authors also warn of a cyber domino effect. As more nations develop cyber capabilities, the risk of miscalculation grows. A cyber attack mistaken for a physical one could trigger a real war, a scenario that feels all too plausible in 2025, given tensions in places like the South China Sea and the Persian Gulf. So, what can be done? McLaughlin and Holstein offer a roadmap for countering the cyber threat. First, democracies must strengthen their defenses, investing in cybersecurity for critical infrastructure and training a new generation of cyber experts. Second, the U.S. and its allies need to impose stricter consequences for cyber attacks. Sanctions aren't enough. The authors call for offensive cyber operations to deter aggressors. Third, international norms for cyberspace must be established, though the authors acknowledge this is a tall order given the competing interests of nations like China and Russia. Finally, McLaughlin and Holstein urge citizens to be vigilant. Disinformation campaigns, like those run by Russia and Iran, thrive on public ignorance. By staying informed, we can resist the psychological warfare that seeks to divide us. Let's wrap up. Battlefield Cyber by Michael McLaughlin and William J. Holstein is a chilling look at how China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are using cyber attacks to undermine democracy and reshape the global order. From Iran's attacks on Israel to North Korea's cyber heists, these nations are waging a shadow war that threatens us all. As we've seen in 2025, with escalating cyber incidents worldwide, this battlefield is only growing more dangerous. Thanks for joining us on At One Insight World for this audiobook summary. If this opened your eyes to the cyber threat, grab a copy of Battlefield Cyber to learn more. What do you think? How can democracies fight back against cyber warfare? Share your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more geopolitics content. We've got more exciting summaries coming your way. Until next time, stay curious.